The sky above the desert world of Cora Prime burned orange with fire. Alien warships drifted like silent giants, their shadows falling over the ruined cities below. The people of Cora Prime had always believed humans were weak, fragile creatures from a green planet far away. But that belief was about to change. Sergeant Kira Van, a tall alien warrior from the Thrax Dominion, stood among the ruins, her blue skin glowing faintly under the sun. Her armor was scratched and dented, but her pride was untouched. She was a sniper, trained since childhood to be the best in her battalion. Her vision could see for miles, her reflexes faster than any humans. And yet, she had just watched an entire Thrax platoon disappear in seconds. She crouched behind a broken wall, scanning the ridges through her scope. The air shimmered with heat. Nothing moved, no sound, no dust, only silence. But she knew someone was out there. Someone who could fire a shot so perfect, so precise, that it cut through armor and bone before the sound even reached her ears. Her comlink buzzed softly. "Kira, report," came her commander's voice. "Unit 7 is gone," she said, her tone cold. "Something picked them off. One shot each. No warning. Enemy artillery? No, too clean. This was a sniper. Impossible. No alien can shoot like that from this distance." Kira Van looked up at the ridge again, her jaw tightening. "It wasn't an alien," she said quietly. "It was human." The word hung in the air like poison dot far above the battlefield. Hidden beneath a rock formation, a single human sniper lay still as stone. His name was Lieutenant Mason Ha, Earth Federation Special Forces. His armor was camouflaged to match the sand, his rifle longer than his arm, every part fine-tuned by his own hands. He breathed slowly, steady, like a machine. Through his scope, he watched the alien patrol move carefully through the ruins. He didn't fire yet. He never fired until he was sure. That was what made him dangerous, not just his aim, but his patience. "Target acquired," he whispered softly into his mic. From the command ship orbiting above, a calm female voice responded. "Copy that, Mason. Make it clean." He smiled faintly. "Always." Kira Van's instincts screamed. She could feel it, someone watching her. She turned slowly, scanning the ridge again. The sun reflected off something small, almost invisible. Then she saw it. A glint. Just a sparkle of light. She rolled to the side a second before the shot came. The bullet slammed into the stone where her head had been, exploding it into dust. The sound reached her half a second later, a deep, sharp crack echoing across the canyon. She hit the ground, breathing hard, her mind racing. That shot, it came from at least 2 kilometers away. No Thrax soldier could ever fire that far. No alien she knew could even see that far clearly. "Commander," she hissed into her comm. "It's him again. The human sniper. I saw the flash. Can you confirm the kill?" "No," she said, eyes narrowing. "He missed. Then find him. End this." Kira Van crawled across the rubble, moving silently. Her armor adjusted to the sand, blending with the environment. She lifted her rifle, scanning the ridge again. The human had fired once. That meant he had moved. But where? Above her, Mason adjusted his scope. He had missed by less than a breath. "She's fast," he murmured. He respected that. Not many aliens could dodge a shot like his. He changed position, sliding silently to another perch. His boots made no sound on the rock. His eyes stayed locked on his target through the thermal display. He could see her faint heat signature glowing among the ruins. Kira Van felt her pulse race. She wasn't used to fear, but something about this human unsettled her. His precision, his patience, it didn't feel natural. It felt calculated. She lined up her scope, sweeping across the ridge, looking for the smallest sign of movement. But all she saw were rocks and heat waves. A voice came from behind her. Looking for me? She spun around. A flash of light blinded her. The human was behind her, rifle aimed but finger off the trigger. He had her, but he didn't fire. For a moment, they just stared at each other, two soldiers, two enemies, two predators who had finally met face to face. Caravine's eyes widened in disbelief. No way, she whispered. The human tilted his head slightly, his voice calm and confident. You're good, he said, but not good enough. Before she could react, he vanished into the dust, leaving only his footprints behind. She stood frozen, heart pounding. Her world had just shifted. Everything she'd been told about humans was wrong. They weren't weak. They weren't slow. They were something else, something dangerous. And she had a feeling this was only the beginning. Caravine stood in the silence of the ruins, her heart still beating fast. The human had been right behind her, and yet she hadn't heard a single sound. He had moved like a shadow, fast, quiet, almost invisible. No Thrax soldier could do that. No one could. She crouched down and touched the footprints he left behind. The sand was still shifting where he had stood, but the pattern of his steps made no sense. They overlapped, changing directions, confusing her tracker's eyes. Whoever this human was, he knew exactly how to disappear. Commander, she said into her comlink. I made contact with the human sniper. There was silence for a moment before the voice replied. Contact? You mean visual? Yes, he was close. Too close. And the kill? She paused, staring at the horizon. He could have taken the shot. He didn't. That makes no sense. Humans don't hesitate. Caravine's eyes narrowed. This one does. He wanted me to see him. Above the planet, inside the orbiting Earth command ship, Mason Holly removed his helmet and wiped the sweat from his forehead. The battle reports flashed across his visor, enemy movements, troop losses and incoming orders. He ignored most of it. His focus was still on that alien sniper. He leaned back in his chair, thinking about her face, the blue skin, the eyes like liquid silver, the calm fury in her expression. She wasn't like the others. She had survived his shot. That had never happened before. Lieutenant Holly, said a voice from the comm screen. It was Captain Brooks, his commanding officer. Yes, sir. Your mission parameters remain unchanged. The Thrax sniper must be eliminated before their reinforcements arrive. Mason nodded. Understood. Don't underestimate her. He smiled faintly. Too late for that. On the surface, Caravine moved through the ruins like a ghost. She scanned the high ridges, her rifle ready, but she felt more like prey than predator now. Every gust of wind made her flinch. Every shadow looked like him. The sun dipped lower, painting the world in orange and gold. The wind howled through the broken metal towers, carrying whispers of war. Her troops were scattered. The human forces were advancing quietly, striking from the dark and fading before she could counterattack. But she refused to retreat. Pride wouldn't let her. She was Thrax. She was the best sniper in her division. And now she had a human to prove wrong. Night fell quickly on Cora Prime. The twin moons rose, bathing the land in silver light. Caravine set up her position on a collapsed tower, her rifle steady, eyes sharp. She waited. Hours passed. The only sound was the wind. Then she saw it movement. A figure slipping between rocks, almost invisible. She adjusted her scope, holding her breath. The target was far, but not too far. She lined up the shot, exhaled slowly, and fired. The bullet screamed through the air, cutting the silence in half. It hit dead center. The figure dropped. Caravine smiled faintly. Got you. But the smile didn't last. Through her scope, she saw sparks instead of blood. The body on the ground flickered and vanished like smoke. A decoy drone. Before she could react, a voice spoke behind her. Calm, confident, familiar. Nice try. She spun around, her rifle raised, but Mason was already gone. Only his voice echoed through her earpiece. Somehow he had hacked into her channel. You learn fast, he said. I'll give you that. Her teeth clenched. Coward. Show yourself. Why? You'll just miss again. She fired blindly toward the sound, bullets striking metal beams and sending echoes into the dark. But he wasn't there. He was always one step ahead. Always watching. She took cover, breathing hard, her heart racing again. Why are you doing this? She shouted. There was a pause. Then his voice came softly, almost thoughtful. Because you started this war. And because I can't let you win. Kiravine closed her eyes for a moment. She could hear his footsteps now, faint and distant. He was moving away, not attacking. That confused her even more. Why didn't he kill her when he had the chance? She lowered her weapon slowly. The desert wind carried the sound of engines and the distant human dropships landing, preparing for the next assault. The war was changing, and she knew it. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure who the real hunter was anymore. In the distance, Mason knelt behind a ridge, watching her through his scope. He could see her standing alone on that tower, her hair moving in the wind. He didn't fire. Not yet, he whispered to himself. You'll understand soon. The night deepened around them, and the desert fell silent once more. Two snipers, two worlds apart, locked in a deadly game neither truly wanted to play. And somewhere deep inside both of them, a question began to form. What if this war didn't need to end in death? Kiravine stood in the silence of the ruins, her heart still beating fast. The human had been right behind her, and yet she hadn't heard a single sound. He had moved like a shadow, fast, quiet, almost invisible. No Thrax soldier could do that. No one could. She crouched down and touched the footprints he left behind. The sand was still shifting where he had stood, but the pattern of his steps made no sense. They overlapped, changing directions, confusing her tracker's eyes. Whoever this human was, he knew exactly how to disappear. Commander, she said into her comlink. I made contact with the human sniper. There was silence for a moment before the voice replied. Contact? You mean visual? Yes, he was close. Too close. And the kill? She paused, staring at the horizon. He could have taken the shot. He didn't. That makes no sense. Humans don't hesitate. Kiravine's eyes narrowed. This one does. He wanted me to see him. Above the planet, inside the orbiting Earth command ship, Mason Hawley removed his helmet and wiped the sweat from his forehead. The battle reports flashed across his visor: enemy movements, troop losses, and incoming orders. He ignored most of it. His focus was still on that alien sniper. He leaned back in his chair, thinking about her face, the blue skin, the eyes like liquid silver, the calm fury in her expression. She wasn't like the others. She had survived his shot. That had never happened before. Lieutenant Hawley, said a voice from the screen. It was Captain Brooks, his commanding officer. Yes, sir. Your mission parameters remain unchanged. The Thrax sniper must be eliminated before their reinforcements arrive. Mason nodded. Understood. Don't underestimate her. He smiled faintly. Too late for that. On the surface, Kiravine moved through the ruins like a ghost. She scanned the high ridges, her rifle ready, but she felt more like prey than predator now. Every gust of wind made her flinch. Every shadow looked like him. The sun dipped lower, painting the world in orange and gold. The wind howled through the broken metal towers, carrying whispers of war. Her troops were scattered. The human forces were advancing quietly, striking from the dark and fading before she could counterattack, but she refused to retreat. Pride wouldn't let her. She was Thrax. She was the best sniper in her division. And now she had a human to prove wrong. Night fell quickly on Cora Prime. The twin moons rose, bathing the land in silver light. Kiravine set up her position on a collapsed tower, her rifle steady, eyes sharp. She waited. Hours passed. The only sound was the wind. Then she saw it movement. A figure slipping between rocks, almost invisible. She adjusted her scope, holding her breath. The target was far, but not too far. She lined up the shot, exhaled slowly, and fired. The bullet screamed through the air, cutting the silence in half. It hit dead center. The figure dropped. Kiravine smiled faintly. "Got you." But the smile didn't last. Through her scope, she saw sparks instead of blood. The body on the ground flickered and vanished like smoke. A decoy drone. Before she could react, a voice spoke behind her, calm, confident, familiar. "Nice try." She spun around, her rifle raised, but Mason was already gone. Only his voice echoed through her earpiece. Somehow he had hacked into her comm channel. "You learn fast," he said. "I'll give you that." Her teeth clenched. "Coward. Show yourself." "Why?" "You'll just miss again." She fired blindly toward the sound, bullets striking metal beams and sending echoes into the dark. But he wasn't there. He was always one step ahead. Always watching. She took cover, breathing hard, her heart racing again. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted. There was a pause. Then his voice came softly, almost thoughtful. "Because you started this war. And because I can't let you win." Kiravine closed her eyes for a moment. She could hear his footsteps now, faint and distant. He was moving away, not attacking. That confused her even more. Why didn't he kill her when he had the chance? She lowered her weapon slowly. The desert wind carried the sound of engines and the distant human dropships landing, preparing for the next assault. The war was changing, and she knew it. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure who the real hunter was anymore. In the distance, Mason knelt behind a ridge, watching her through his scope. He could see her standing alone on that tower, her hair moving in the wind. He didn't fire. "Not yet," he whispered to himself. "You'll understand soon." The night deepened around them, and the desert fell silent once more. Two snipers, 2 worlds apart, locked in a deadly game neither truly wanted to play. And somewhere deep inside both of them, a question began to form. What if this war didn't need to end in death? The night stretched long over Cora Prime. The wind whispered through the ruins like ghosts singing old war songs. The twin moons cast pale light over broken machines and shattered walls. Lieutenant Mason Hawley sat against a rock, checking the readings on his rifle's scope. His energy cells were low, and his communication signal was fading. The interference from the planet's magnetic field made it hard to reach command. He tried again, but all he heard was static. He sighed quietly. Figures. Alone again. He looked down at the sand, drawing small lines with his glove. He didn't like being cut off, but part of him welcomed the silence. No orders, no voices, just him in the night. A small beep sounded in his helmet. He frowned. It wasn't a Federation signal. It was something else, an encrypted Thrax transmission. He hesitated for a moment before decoding it. A distorted female voice spoke, filled with frustration and pain. "This is Sergeant Kiravine of the Thrax Dominion. To any surviving units, respond. We've lost contact with command. I repeat, respond." Mason froze. Her voice. It was her. He listened quietly as she continued. "If you hear this, regroup at Grid 79 Alpha. We will not surrender. The humans are advancing. We must hold the line." Her voice cracked slightly near the end. She tried to hide it, but Mason could hear the weariness beneath the strength. He stared at the transmitter for a long time before switching it off. "Still fighting," he murmured. "Even when she's already lost." He stood, slinging his rifle across his back. He could leave her there alone, surrounded, waiting for reinforcements that would never come. But something inside him resisted that idea. Maybe it was respect. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something else he didn't want to admit. In the distance, Kiravine crouched inside a collapsed structure, watching the horizon. Her troops were gone. Her commander wasn't responding. Her world's proud army had fallen silent. The realization hit her harder than any bullet ever could. She looked at the cracked photo on her wrist pad, an image of her younger self with her squad. All gone now. She closed her eyes, whispering, "How did this happen?" Then she felt something. A pulse. A faint energy reading nearby. Human tech. She grabbed her rifle, scanning the ridge. The signal moved slowly, too careful to be a patrol. Her heart quickened. It was him. She aimed her rifle, eyes narrowing through the scope. The target was partially hidden, moving between shadows. She steadied her breath, finger tightening on the trigger, but then the target stopped and raised a small white flag. Kiravine blinked. A flag? No soldier did that on this world. Through her scope, she saw him. The human sniper, Mason, standing tall, not aiming, not hiding. His weapon was slung over his shoulder. "What are you doing?" She whispered to herself. He raised his voice, calm but firm. "I'm not here to fight. Your command is gone. You know it." She hesitated, her grip tightening. "You expect me to believe that?" "Check your signal," he said. Kiravine frowned and tapped her wrist pad. The comm channel was dead. Even the long-range beacon was silent. She had tried before, but now she realized there was nothing. No response, no command, no backup. The Thrax fleet had pulled out. Her heart sank. "No." She whispered. Mason took a few careful steps closer. "This war is over for you. Walk away." Kiravine raised her rifle again. "You don't decide when it's over." "I'm not your enemy," he said softly. "Not anymore." For a long moment, neither moved. The wind blew between them, carrying dust and memories of the battle. The silence felt heavier than any weapon. Finally, she lowered her rifle just slightly. "Why didn't you kill me before?" Mason looked at her through his visor. "Because you weren't my mission. You were a soldier doing your job." She scoffed. "And now what? You'll just let me live?" "Maybe I'm tired of killing people who don't deserve it." Kiravine stared at him. In all her years of war, she had never heard a human speak like that. Every story about them described cruelty, aggression, and chaos. But this man sounded human in a way that surprised her. A distant rumble broke their silence. The ground trembled as explosions lit up the horizon. Both turned toward the light. Kiravine's eyes widened. "That's not Thrax artillery." Mason frowned. "That's not ours either." Something else was moving across the desert, massive shadows, too large to be human tanks, too mechanical to be creatures. The ground cracked beneath their weight. "What the hell is that?" Mason whispered. Kiravine's face hardened. "Something neither of us called." The unknown force fired again, destroying both Thrax and human wreckage alike. It didn't care who it hit. Mason quickly loaded his rifle. "Looks like the game just changed." Kiravine took position beside him, her eyes meeting his. "For the first time they weren't enemies. Then we fight together," she said quietly. Mason nodded once. "Let's make it count." As the desert shook and the unknown machines closed in, two snipers, one human, one alien took aim side by side under the cold moonlight. No longer fighting for their species, but for survival. And somewhere deep inside both of them, a strange truth began to grow. Sometimes the only way to survive war is to stop being enemies. The night exploded with fire. The ground shook as burning dust rose into the air. Huge metal shapes marched across the desert, machines neither human nor Thrax had ever seen. Their eyes glowed red. Their steps thundered like drums of war. Mason Hawley gripped his rifle tightly, staring through the smoke. "Those aren't ours," he muttered beside him. Kiravine adjusted her visor. Her sharp alien eyes scanned the chaos. "They're not Thrax either. I've never seen designs like that. Look at the armor plates, organic and metal mixed together." The machines opened fire. Blinding blue energy bolts cut through the ruins. One hit a nearby wreck, blasting it into molten glass. The shockwave threw Mason and Kiravine behind a wall. Mason coughed, brushing sand from his visor. "Friendly, huh?" Kiravine gave a humorless smile. "If they were friendly, we'd already be dead." Another blast ripped through the wall. Mason rolled over the rubble and took aim. Through his scope, he saw a massive machine kneeling down. It had long spider-like legs and a cannon mounted on its shoulder. He exhaled slowly, aligning the shot with its power core. One bullet could change everything. He squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out like thunder. The bullet struck the machine's side, sparks bursting in all directions, but the creature didn't fall. It turned its glowing eyes toward them. Kiravine fired next, her plasma rounds slamming into the same spot. The two attacks combined, finally cracking the armor. The machine stumbled, then exploded into a ball of blue flame. Mason grinned behind his helmet. "Nice shot." Kiravine smirked back. "You weakened it first. I just finished the job." More shapes moved through the smoke, dozens now. The air burned with heat and metal. Mason ducked behind cover again. "They're everywhere." Kiravine reloaded. "Then we'll make every shot count." They fired in rhythm, covering each other's blind spots. Mason's precision bullets found the gaps in armor, while Kiravine's plasma blasts tore through weak joints. For a brief moment, two soldiers from opposite worlds fought as one. Between bursts of light, Mason spoke through the static of his cum. "Who built these things?" Kiravine's voice was sharp, but thoughtful. "Rumors. My people once heard of a rogue AI machines left behind from the old wars before our time. We thought they were gone. Guess they're not." An explosion threw them apart. Mason hit the ground hard, his rifle sliding out of reach. He groaned, his vision spinning. One of the machines loomed above him, its cannon charging. Before he could move, a blue blur leapt from the side. Kiravine landed between them, firing her rifle point blank into the machine's sensor. The explosion knocked her back, but the robot collapsed in a heap of smoke and metal. Mason pushed himself up and rushed to her. "You okay?" She nodded weakly, her armor smoking. "Still alive." He handed her a spare power cell. "You saved my life." She smirked faintly. "Now we're even." They retreated into the ruins, panting. The night sky burned red with distant fires. Mason leaned against a wall, checking his ammo. Half a clip left. Kiravine looked at her own weapon. 2 charges. "Then we're empty." He gave a tired chuckle. "Great odds." She looked at him, her silver eyes steady. "You humans fight even when you know you can't win." "Why?" He shrugged slightly. "Because sometimes that's when it matters most." Her expression softened, almost curious. "You're different from what I was told." "Yeah," he said quietly. "So are you." A sudden flash lit up the sky. A massive ship broke through the clouds, dark and angular. It wasn't human or Thrax. The machines below stopped moving, as if waiting for commands. Kiravine's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're calling something. Or someone." Mason frowned. "We can't stay here." They sprinted toward the canyon ahead, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. The desert roared behind them. At the edge of the cliffs, Mason grabbed her arm. Down their natural caves. She followed him inside, their boots echoing in the tunnels. The noise outside faded. Only the sound of their breathing remained in the dim blue glow of her wrist light. Kiravine studied the human beside her. His face, half hidden behind the cracked visor, showed exhaustion but also resolve. "You could have left me," she said softly. He glanced at her. "Yeah, but that's not how I was trained." "To what?" "Be a hero?" "To be human." For a moment, they just looked at each other. The air between them carried something unfamiliar: respect, maybe trust, and something deeper neither wanted to name. Kiravine finally looked away. "Rest for a few minutes. We'll need strength for what comes next." Mason nodded, sitting down, his rifle across his knees. Outside, the machines reorganized, scanning the surface for heat signatures. The strange ship above the desert pulsed with energy, as if awakening something older than both their civilizations. Deep in the cave, Mason whispered, almost to himself, "Whatever those things are, they don't care who wins this war." Kiravine replied quietly, "Then maybe for once, we fight for the same side." The cave lights flickered as a distant rumble rolled through the ground. The war they both thought they understood was changing, turning into something far greater and far more dangerous. And in that dark, uncertain moment, two enemies became reluctant allies against a threat that neither human nor alien could face alone. The cave was silent except for the soft hum of their armor systems cooling down. Faint blue light from Kiravine's wrist pad flickered against the walls, showing ancient markings carved into the stone. Mason sat with his back to the wall, breathing slowly, his rifle resting across his lap. Outside, the night thundered with explosions. The rogue machines were sweeping the desert, hunting for survivors. The ground trembled with each distant blast. Kiravine touched one of the carvings. The lines formed a pattern, circular and old. "These aren't natural," she said quietly. "This place was built." Mason looked over. "Built? By who?" She traced her finger along the lines. "The Thrax have legends about the makers, the ones who shaped our world before the Dominion rose. We thought they were myths." Mason frowned. "You think those machines are connected to them?" Kiravine nodded slightly. "Maybe. If this place is one of their outposts, it explains the readings. The energy here isn't from this era." He leaned closer, his flashlight sweeping the carvings. Strange runes shimmered faintly, glowing brighter as if reacting to their presence. "Feels like they're alive," he muttered. "Maybe they are," she replied. A sudden tremor shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. Mason stood up, alert. "They're getting closer." Kiravine checked her weapon. "Then we moved deeper." They followed a narrow passage that twisted downwards. The air grew cooler, heavier, and the walls began to change from stone to smooth metal. Mason ran his hand along the surface. "This isn't rock. It's alloy." Kiravine looked ahead, her silver eyes reflecting the faint light. "We're inside something old and big." After several minutes, they reached a massive chamber. In the center stood a pillar covered in glowing symbols. Around it lay the remains of machines, ancient ones, long dead, covered in dust. Mason approached the pillar, scanning it with his visor. "It's still active. Low power, but alive." Kiravine stepped closer, studying the alien text. "These symbols, they speak of control and rebirth. The makers left something behind to protect their worlds." Mason looked at her. "Then those machines out there, they're the protectors?" Her voice turned cold. "Not anymore. They've gone rogue. Without their masters, they see everything as a threat." Before Mason could reply, a soft hum filled the chamber. The pillar's light pulsed faster. A projection flickered to life above it, a faint image of a humanoid figure made of shifting light. Its voice was calm but distorted. "Unauthorized presence detected," it said. "Identify." Mason raised his hand slowly. "Human, Lieutenant Mason Hale, Earth Federation." Kiravine followed. Sergeant Kiravine, Thrax Dominion. The hologram paused, scanning them both. Conflict detected between your species. Access limited. Mason frowned. We're not fighting each other now. Something else is out there, machines attacking both sides. The light pulsed again. Defense Protocol 7 active. Units reactivated to cleanse surface. Kiravine stepped forward. You mean those machines? You sent them? They were created to protect maker sites, the voice replied. But corruption in command code has redefined all biological life as hostile. Reprogramming failed. Containment incomplete. Mason exchanged a look with her. Can you stop them? He asked. Command authority locked, the AI said. Only combined override from two opposing command species may reset directives. Kiravine blinked. Two opposing species? The hologram turned toward them. Human and Thrax, cooperation required. Mason gave a small, humorless laugh. You've got to be kidding me. Kiravine crossed her arms. So to save this planet, we have to work together. Affirmative, the voice said. Failure will result in planetary sterilization. The projection faded, leaving the chamber in silence once more. Mason rubbed his forehead. Planetary sterilization. That sounds bad. Kiravine replied flatly. It means everything dies. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Mason looked at her. You in? She hesitated, then nodded. If we don't stop them, neither of us goes home. Good enough for me. They turned back toward the tunnel, preparing to climb to the surface again. The cave shook violently, and pieces of the ceiling began to fall. Mason grabbed Kiravine's arm, pulling her back as the floor cracked beneath them. The passage behind them collapsed completely. Guess there's only one way out now, Mason said. Forward, she replied. They ran deeper into the structure, following the faint light ahead. The sounds of metal footsteps echoed in the distance. The rogue machines had found an entrance dot as they reached another chamber. Kiravine glanced at Mason. If this plan fails? He finished for her. It won't. But deep down, both knew the truth. The odds were impossible. Two soldiers from enemy species, trapped under an alien world, trying to stop an army that didn't know mercy. Still, Mason tightened his grip on his rifle. We've got one thing they don't. Kiravine looked at him questioningly. What's that? He smiled faintly. We're alive. The hum of the ancient machine grew louder, as if the world itself was awakening. They exchanged one last look, then stepped forward into the unknown together. The ancient tunnels of Cora Prime stretched endlessly into the dark. The deeper Mason and Kiravine went, the louder the low hum beneath their feet became. It was like walking inside a sleeping giant. Every vibration, every echo felt alive. The faint glow from their helmets cut through the dust-filled air. Mason held his rifle close, his eyes scanning every corner. Kiravine moved beside him, silent and focused. They were no longer enemies, just two survivors with the same goal. How far do you think this place goes? Mason whispered. Kiravine glanced around. Deep, the Makers built their fortresses under mountains. Some say they used the planet itself as armor. He smirked slightly. Smart, wish we'd thought of that. You humans prefer to build in the open, she replied with a small grin. So your enemies can find you faster. For the first time since they met, Mason laughed quietly. The sound echoed softly in the metal corridor. Fair point. They reached a narrow shaft leading upward. At the top, faint daylight flickered through a broken vent. Kiravine looked up. That's our way out. Mason slung his rifle. You first. I'll cover you. She climbed easily, her alien strength carrying her swiftly up the wall. Halfway up, the structure groaned and shifted. Mason looked up sharply. Careful. I've got it. She called back. But before she could grab the next ledge, the wall cracked. Mason didn't think. He leapt, catching her wrist just as she slipped. The jolt pulled at his arm, pain shooting through his shoulder. "Got you," he grunted. Kiravine's eyes widened in surprise. "You're insane." "Probably." He pulled hard, and together they scrambled to the top. Both collapsed, panting, on the dusty floor above. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Kiravine turned her head toward him. "You could have let me fall." Mason smiled faintly. "Not my style." They stood and looked around. The chamber opened into a vast space filled with broken pillars and old machinery. Above them, light streamed through cracks in the ceiling, but something moved in the shadows. A mechanical screech echoed through the air. Red lights flickered multiple targets, closing in. Mason raised his rifle. "Guess they found us." Kiravine powered her weapon. "Then let's make this count." The machines poured from the tunnels, tall, insect-like things with glowing red cores. Mason fired first, each shot precise and deadly. Kiravine followed, her plasma rounds lighting the air with blue streaks. Metal tore apart under their combined fire. For a moment, they held the line. But more came too many. "We can't stay here," Mason shouted. Kiravine pointed toward a platform at the far end. "That lift might still work." They sprinted, dodging bursts of plasma fire. Mason hit the control panel. Sparks flew. Come on." The lift groaned to life, slowly rising. As they ascended, the machines climbed after them, crawling up the walls like spiders. Kiravine aimed down, firing rapidly. "They're climbing faster." Mason tossed a frag charge over the edge. "That'll slow them down." The explosion shook the shaft, throwing pieces of metal and dust into the air. For a few seconds, silence returned. Kiravine leaned against the rail, breathing hard. "You humans always bring explosives, don't you?" Mason smirked. "It's kind of our thing." When the lift finally stopped, they stepped into a huge, circular room. In the center stood another control pillar, glowing faintly like the one below. "This must be the command relay," Kiravine said. "The AI said we need to activate both systems to override the machines." Mason nodded. "Then let's get it done." They approached the console. As they did, the voice from before returned calm but faint. "Warning, system access requires synchronization of human and Thrax biosignatures." Kiravine raised an eyebrow. "That means we both have to touch it." "Same time," Mason said. They exchanged a quick look. Then, together, they placed their hands on the glowing surface. A surge of energy shot through the room. The pillar lit up with bright white light, and a deep tone echoed through the structure. "Synchronization confirmed," said the voice. "Primary override initializing." Kiravine winced as the floor shook beneath them. "It's working." But Mason frowned. "Or waking something up." The light around them shifted from white to red. A massive holographic projection formed above the pillar, a tall figure of light and steel, humanoid, but monstrous. Its voice boomed like thunder. "Unauthorized access detected. Defense protocols active." Kiravine stepped back. "That's not the same AI." Mason raised his weapon. "Yeah, I noticed." The hologram's eyes glowed crimson. "You cannot stop the purge." The walls split open as massive mechanical guards unfolded from hidden alcoves. Bigger, stronger, faster than any they had seen. Mason glanced at Kiravine. "So much for teamwork." She gave a sharp grin. "We fight, or we die. Then let's fight." They dove for cover as the machines opened fire. The air filled with explosions and sparks. Mason's shot struck true, but the armor of these new units was thick. Kiravine's plasma bolts barely slowed them down. The hologram watched silently, as if testing them. Mason reloaded, his voice calm despite the chaos. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Kiravine crouched beside him, eyes fierce. "If we can't kill them, we shut them down." Together, they moved toward the central pillar again, dodging fire and debris. Mason covered her while she tore open a side panel. Wires sparked, light flickered, alarm screamed. "Almost there!" She shouted. "Hurry!" Mason yelled back, firing nonstop. One machine lunged toward them, but before it could strike, Kiravine jammed her plasma blade into the console. A blinding flash filled the room. Everything went silent. The machines froze mid-step, their red lights fading to black. The hologram flickered, its voice breaking apart. "Override." "Accepted." Then it was gone. Mason lowered his rifle slowly. "Did we just win?" Kiravine looked at the smoking console. "Maybe for now." The ceiling cracked, and daylight poured through. They looked up at the sky, broken, but alive. Kiravine smiled faintly. "You humans. You really don't give up." Mason returned the smile. "Guess it's contagious." They stood together in the light, exhausted but victorious. But deep inside the machine core, a faint red spark flickered again, something neither of them saw. The war wasn't over yet. Asterisk. The desert sky was burning gold as Mason and Kiravine finally climbed out of the ancient ruins. The air outside felt different, hot, dry, alive. For a moment, they both just stood there, breathing it in. Behind them, the ground rumbled softly. The massive structure they had escaped from began to sink, disappearing under the sand like a dying beast. Mason lowered his rifle, still watching the horizon. "Looks like it's finally over." Kiravine's eyes narrowed. "Or it's just beginning." In the distance, smoke rose from the battlefield, columns of black stretching toward the orange clouds. Both human and Thrak ships hovered low, still locked in uneasy formation. Mason sighed. "If command sees us together, they'll shoot first and ask later." Kiravine checked her communicator. "Mine's still jammed. Dominion forces must be running interference." "Same on my end," Mason said. He scanned the dunes. "We need cover before someone spots us." They moved through the sand, the sun dipping lower behind them. Every few steps, Mason looked back. The silence was unsettling. No gunfire, no drones, no machines. Just wind and sand. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a ridge overlooking a half-destroyed human outpost. The antennas were twisted, the metal scorched. Mason squinted through his scope. "That's Delta Base. It was hours before the machines hit it." "Any survivors?" Kiravine asked. He shook his head. "Can't tell. Let's find out." They approached cautiously. The place smelled of smoke and ozone. Burned-out vehicles littered the sand. Mason's boots crunched over broken glass. Inside one of the bunkers, faint voices echoed. He raised his hand to stop Kiravine. "Wait here." Mason slipped around the corner, rifle ready. Then he froze. Inside, a group of human soldiers huddled around a comms unit, trying to repair it. "Lieutenant Hall?" one of them said in shock. "We thought you were dead." Mason lowered his rifle slightly. "Good to see you too, Corporal." But before he could say more, the soldiers noticed Kiravine standing in the doorway. Their expressions turned cold instantly. Weapons snapped up. "Sir." "Alien contact." One shouted. Mason stepped in front of her. "Stand down." "She's with me." "With you?" the corporal said, eyes wide. "She's Dominion. You know what they've done." Mason's jaw tightened. "I do. But she also helped me save your lives. Without her, none of us would be standing." The men hesitated. Kiravine stood still, calm but ready. The air between them was thick with tension. Finally, Mason's voice cut through. "We've got bigger problems. Those machines underground weren't just random attackers. They were part of something old. Something still running. The corporal frowned. What do you mean? An ancient AI, Mason said. It was controlling the machines. We shut it down temporarily. But it's not gone. It's adapting. Kiravine added quietly. If it wakes again, it won't care who's Thrax or human. It'll wipe us all. The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. One of them finally lowered his weapon. So what now? Mason looked at the horizon. Now we stop it for good. Before anyone could answer, a shadow passed overhead. Everyone looked up. A Dominion dropship descended rapidly, kicking up sand. Kiravine tensed. That's my unit. The soldiers raised their rifles again. Mason cursed under his breath. Hold fire. The dropship landed hard, its ramp opening with a hiss. A squad of Thrax soldiers stepped out, their leader in dark red armor. His eyes locked on Kiravine. Sergeant Kiravine, he said sharply. You've been reported missing in hostile territory. His gaze shifted to Mason, and now I see why. Kiravine stepped forward. Commander Vector. He's not the enemy. But Vector cut her off. Silence. You've broken protocol, consorted with the enemy, and risked Dominion security. Mason moved beside her. She just helped save this planet, in case you missed that. The commander's expression didn't change. You speak too freely, human. This matter doesn't concern your kind. Mason smirked slightly. It does if the world ends. Vector raised his weapon. Stand down, both of you. Kiravine glanced at Mason. For a heartbeat, they both understood what needed to happen. Mason's hand went to his rifle. You really want to do this? Vector's eyes glowed faintly. If I must. But before anyone could fire, the ground shook violently. A massive sound roared across the desert, deep, mechanical, ancient. Everyone froze. In the distance, dunes collapsed as something enormous began to rise. A gigantic metal structure, half buried for centuries, broke through the surface. Its eyes blazed crimson. Kiravine's voice was barely a whisper. The AI. It's awake. The Thrax commander lowered his weapon slowly, disbelief washing over him. Impossible. Mason looked at the rising shape, towering, unstoppable. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what I said last time. The ground split open beneath them. Sand erupted into the air as the colossal machine unleashed a deafening roar. Its red energy beams tore through the sky. Both sides, human and Thrax, dived for cover as explosions ripped across the desert. Mason and Kiravine crawled behind a broken vehicle. She turned to him, shouting over the noise. It's awake, and it's angry. Mason chambered around. Then we hit it where it hurts. Kiravine nodded, eyes fierce. Together. The desert burned around them. Fire lighting the night as two former enemies prepared to fight side by side against something far beyond their understanding. The desert burned red under a storm of fire. The colossal machine stood like a mountain of metal, its glowing eyes sweeping across the battlefield. Each pulse from its core sent waves of heat through the sand. Its voice thundered through the air, cold, mechanical. Unstoppable, primary protocol, eradicate organic hostility. Mason ducked behind a dune as a blast of plasma scorched the ground where he'd been seconds earlier. Sand rained down around him. His visor flashed red warnings. He glanced at Kiravine beside him, her armor cracked and scorched, but her eyes still blazing with determination. You still think we can win this? Mason shouted over the roar. Kiravine reloaded her weapon, the barrel glowing white-hot. I don't think, she said. I fight. Mason grinned. That's my kind of plan. Above them, human gunships and Thrax fighters circled in chaos, firing everything they had at the mechanical giant. It barely flinched. Its energy shields absorbed the hits like raindrops. Commander Vector's voice came through Kiravine's comms, rough and urgent. All Dominion units fall back. That thing is indestructible. But Kiravine ignored him. If we fall back, everyone dies, she said. Mason looked toward the ruins in the distance, the place where the ancient control pillar still pulsed faintly beneath the sand. Maybe it's not indestructible, he said. The core is still linked to the old system. If we can reach it. Kiravine understood instantly. We shut it down from the inside. Exactly. They ran through the battlefield together, dodging blasts and falling debris. Around them, soldiers, human and Thrax alike had stopped fighting each other. Both sides were turning their fire toward the same enemy. Mason shouted into his comms. This is Lieutenant Mason Hawley to all units, listen up. That thing is the real enemy. You want to live? Cover us. We're going to its heart. Static filled the channel. Then a voice replied, human this time. Copy that, Lieutenant. You heard him. All guns on the big one. The sky erupted as every weapon focused on the giant machine. Explosions rippled across its body, distracting it just long enough. Mason and Kiravine sprinted toward its base, massive, legs like steel towers sinking deep into the sand. Kiravine activated a grappling line from her wrist, firing it into the metal. Hold on, she shouted. Mason grabbed her waist as the line pulled them both upward. They swung through smoke and fire, landing hard against the machine's outer plating. The surface was hot and vibrating with energy. Where's the access port? Mason yelled. Kiravine pointed toward a glowing seam. There! They moved along the machine's side as blasts lit the sky around them. Mason planted a charge and stepped back. Fire in the hole. The explosion tore a hole in the plating. Inside, blinding red light pulsed like a heartbeat. They climbed in. The interior was a maze of machinery wires, pistons, and glowing conduits that hummed with power. Mason's sensors screamed warnings. Radiation, heat, energy overload. Kiravine looked around. The control core should be above us. Mason nodded. Then let's climb. They ascended a narrow shaft filled with rising smoke. The deeper they went, the louder the machine's voice grew. Intruders detected. Termination in progress. Turrets unfolded from the walls, spitting energy bolts. Mason returned fire, each shot precise. Kiravine leapt forward, slicing through the nearest gun with her plasma blade. Keep moving. Mason shouted. They finally reached a massive chamber. At its center floated a glowing sphere, the AI's heart. Energy arced across the air like lightning. Mason stared in awe. That's it. Kiravine stepped forward cautiously. It's alive. It's thinking. The AI's voice filled the room again, deeper now, almost human. You cannot stop evolution. The Makers built perfection. You are flawed. Mason smirked. Maybe, but that's what makes us dangerous. He aimed his rifle at the core. But before he could fire, the AI unleashed a pulse that sent them both flying. Sparks exploded, and their visors went dark. Kiravine landed hard, armor sparking. She coughed, smoke filling her lungs. We can't just shoot it. We need to override it. Mason forced himself up. How? She pointed to a terminal near the core. We combine our signals again. It's the only way. He limped toward it. Let's finish this. They placed their hands on the glowing surface, human and alien, side by side. The system responded instantly, beams of light swirling around them. Synchronization attempt detected, the AI roared. Rejection imminent. Mason gritted his teeth. You're not rejecting us this time. Kiravine's voice was calm. Together, Mason. Energy surged through them. Their armor glowed, their vision blurred, but they didn't let go. The console screamed warnings, heat rising to unbearable levels. The AI's voice faltered. What are you doing? Mason's voice was low. Ending this war. With one final push, the core cracked. Light burst outward, flooding the chamber in white brilliance. Then silence. When the light faded, the machine outside stood frozen, its red eyes dim. Across the battlefield, soldiers looked up in shock as the giant collapsed, sinking slowly into the sand like a dying god. Mason lay on the floor, breathing heavily. Sparks danced above him. He turned his head slightly. "You alive?" Kiravine stirred, coughing. "Barely." She smiled weakly. "But we did it." He chuckled softly. "Told you humans were stubborn." Outside, the desert was quiet again. The sunrise painted the sky in gold and pink. Human and Thrax troops gathered in silence, weapons lowered. Commander Vector approached slowly, his armor dented, his expression unreadable. Kiravine stood shakily. "Commander." Vector looked at Mason, then at her. For a long moment, no one spoke, then he nodded once. "You both saved us." Mason raised an eyebrow. "Does that mean we're not shooting each other today?" Vector almost smiled. "For today." They shared a brief, understanding nod. Enemies yesterday, survivors today. Kiravine turned toward Mason. "So, what happens now?" He looked at the rising sun. "Maybe we start something new. Maybe peace." She smiled faintly. "Maybe." As the wind carried the last echoes of the battle away, Mason picked up his rifle and slung it over his shoulder. He glanced once more at the horizon, where the wreckage of the ancient machine shimmered in the light. "Impossible," he whispered, shaking his head with a grin. "We actually made it." Kiravine looked at him, her eyes bright. "No, Mason, we didn't make the impossible happen. We proved it was never impossible to begin with." Together, they walked toward the sunrise, two soldiers from different worlds, bound by one victory that changed everything. And beneath the sands of Cora Prime, deep in the darkness, a single flicker of red light blinked once, then went dark.